drawing of it? Could you? Yeah? You couldn't, so some could, some couldn't. Okay, that sounds kind of normal, right? So, did you manage to keep it on all night?
Yes.
Did you have a charcoal mess? Okay. I grew up with charcoal, so sometimes it was a mess, but it was always worth it. So, couple things. If you need a bathroom, you go out the double doors here in the back, take a left, like you're going to go out the front door, and to your right, before you get there, are the bathrooms, okay? And if there's a line there and you're really desperate, you can go down the stairs, through the dining room, into the seminar room, and there's 2 more bathrooms, all right? Now, I just want to tell you that this is the last seminar of this year because we're going into Thanksgiving and Christmas now, and it's just a crazy time, right? But January 6th, can you remember that date by chance? This is not political either. January 6th, we have the introductory session for the Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program. This program has been voted as the best program. So at that introductory session, they'll tell you all about how it works and how the books you'll have and the different interesting points that you'll want to know to decide if it's a program that you might want to try. So that's January 6th at 6:30 here, okay? And then January 16, we have a master herbalist and naturopath, Lee Wellard, coming. He came a year or 2 ago, and he has beautiful slides of different herbs, what they look like, and what you use them for. And he's also going to demonstrate how to make a salve and a tincture out of herbs. And it'll be fascinating. I know you'll enjoy it. That is January 16. That's a Thursday night at 6:30, okay? So, with that being said, keep those in mind. There are sign-up sheets in the back. If you want to give us your phone number and that you're interested in those, feel free to do so. They're in the back on the right-hand side, all right? And then during the break, we'll sell product again and after the meeting as well. There will be question and answers, so if you're thinking of a question, think of it because you'll be able to turn it in and John and Kimberly will address that for you. Well, let's bow our heads and have opening prayer, shall we? Lord, thank you for bringing us safely here tonight, that we have this opportunity to learn more about activated charcoal and ways that it can enhance our health. And we ask your Holy Spirit to be here and make us a blessing to each other and help us to learn the information you know that we either need now or will need in the future. And we thank you. Amen. Welcome, John and Kimberly.
There we go. I'm on. There's already been some questions about what the difference is between these products. So Kimberly's going to take a few minutes and just go through them, give you an idea of what she's the one mostly who does the sales, although we have a number of people doing it. So I'm not really the one who to talk with. So she's going to go over these. There are some subtle differences between them and why some are for animals and some are for people and some are for kids. You ready?
Okay. We'll just start with, this is called the Detox and Cleanse. This is a water steam activated charcoal powder that's a USP grade. And this is a very special charcoal. This is actually sold in hospitals and clinics, the very same charcoal. Because we're not a pharmaceutical company, we can only say that it's USP grade, but if we were Johnson & Johnson or something, it literally could be USP certified, but we are not. Activated charcoal made from coconut shell can actually absorb radiation, and this particular one is made in Europe, and it's very, very pure. It goes through all these different stages to keep its purity, And so even though we have a charcoal that is used a lot in, for culinary and in beauty and such, those that want to have all of the certification and the paperwork to back it up, they will choose this besides using it internally as well. You can use this to make a charcoal poultice. It's not that you can't. Of course you can. It's just more spendy, okay? This has an extremely high surface area. And surface area, I don't know, John hasn't really fully explained the surface area, but it's just that this surface area is around, the lowest is around 1600, okay? And that is high for a coconut shell. This is our capsules. These are convenience, okay? This is convenience in a bottle. And this is what we actually have them in sachets as well. This one is, they're vegetarian, they're no excipients in them, meaning there's no, like a lot of times they'll put wood pulp in supplements to make them flow easier, to encapsulate them. We actually had to go to a larger vegetarian capsule because we don't use excipients. It's just, it's very hard for them to encapsulate charcoal. And the supplement, the companies that do this, it's hard to find them because they are not crazy about the mess. And that does add to the cost of having them encapsulated. And they are, of course, encapsulated here in the States. These two are really, in all honesty, the same product, okay? It's the charcoal tablets. We just put a fun label on them. They're the same price. We just put this fun label on for the children, and we have a little QR code where they can actually see monkeys in Tanzania eating charcoal for upset tummies. And so a lot of times the children will ask for a monkey tablet and so we have them for adults too. Now there is a difference between,
Adult monkeys?
What?
Did you say adult monkeys?
Did I say adult monkeys?
You said you had, never mind.
Okay. I don't know. I may have said something odd. So anyway, there are differences. I mean, this is basically convenience, taking the charcoal nice and neat and no mess-free. This is not necessarily mess-free, but you can suck on them. They're meant to be chewed. They're really good for sore throats. You have a sore throat, you just suck on them. It'll really help. And also, I actually had it's like an abscess, and I had like a little half of a golf ball, it felt like, in my gum here. And last night I actually just packed these quite a bit. It almost kind of hurt because I put so many in there, it was pressing against, but by morning it's just like a soft mush, and it's way down and just feels so much better. And so these are very versatile. Before we had our charcoal salve stick, we would tell people if you got stung by a bee or whatever, just, wet it in your mouth and pop it on and put a Band-Aid on, because the charcoal will start drawing the toxin. We actually had somebody in church one time who was really allergic as a 14-year-old boy, and the windows were open and a wasp or bee came in and stung him, and his grandmother started freaking out because he would go into anaphylactic shock. And they raced downstairs to see if John and I were still down there washing the dishes, and we were, and asked if we had any charcoal on us, and all I had on me that day was the tablets. And so that's what we did. We just got it wet, put it on his sting, you could see where it was stung, and put the Band-Aid on, and what did we do? We prayed. We prayed, and we asked God to bless this simple remedy, and nothing happened. And that's a good thing, because he didn't go into anaphylactic shock. It totally drew out the toxins and poisons. And so one day I was sitting at my desk with a lip thing sitting there, and I thought, we need to put charcoal in that. And that's how this came about. And so this is good for bug bites, wood ticks, anything. Usually like when we're at shows and people will see this and they'll have a bug bite and it's driving them nuts, and they'll come and they'll put it on and they'll go, wow, that really worked. We were in Washington, D.C. this past summer, and Dr. Leela got some bites, and she just went through I don't know how many sticks and covered her whole leg. She didn't care. It felt so good. She was cute. But it really works. You can use it on bruises, all kinds of things, but it's just a really handy-dandy thing to have. Nice and quick. And so then this is our vet detox. They're all different charcoals. This one is for animals, and you can use it internally, you can use it topically, put it in their food. One of the stories for me is for my dog, not my present one, but Annie had come home, and she seemed fine, but through the night I thought she was passing this really foul-smelling gas. And I wish I had gotten up during the night, but in the morning there was these pools of stinky blood on the floor, okay? And so she had passed this really foul-smelling blood, and she had these beautiful deer eyes, the black liner-like eyes. And they were, I kid you not, I wish I had taken pictures, but you're excited at the time. And so they were purple, literally purple. And so at detox, okay? A third of a cup, always had some wet dog food. That's not her normal dog food. And always an organic dog food that she just loved. I knew she'd eat on her deathbed. And so I mixed a third cup, and I just kind of fed her because even though she was 28 pounds, she was getting lethargic. And so she ate it. And then I did it again in the afternoon, and I did it again in the early evening. But she was already starting to act well. There was no more blood. I'm on the overkill side, so I did it again in the morning, but by evening, she was fine. Totally, totally fine. One time we had a customer, he's a customer of ours, and they carry our products in their store in Palm Springs, Florida. And he calls me up one day, and he's placing an order. And then all of a sudden he says, oh, wait. I got to take this call. So I'm on hold. And he gets back and he goes, oh, that was the vet. And I said, well, what's wrong? He goes, oh, he ate a poisoned rat and he is so sick. And I said, William, don't you have charcoal in your store? And what are you selling it for? And he's going, well, yeah. And I said, okay, it doesn't matter. He didn't have the vet detox. He had the hardwood and he had this. I said, just start. And he was a big dog. Can't remember if he was a Great Dane or what, on that order. And so I told him to just give him copious amounts, okay? So he did. He just got it off his shelf, started, found a way to give it to him. You never give it dry. You always give it wet. Probably put it in a wet dog food. He called me. So I was doing the order in the morning. He calls me in the afternoon and says, I canceled the vet appointment. He's fine. Yeah. So totally pulled him through. And we have so many stories on animals. And John showed you the one on the horse last night. And we had an amazing story on a brown recluse bite and on a horse. And this is what pulled him through. He was actually being treated with antibiotics, and the people liked colloidal silver, so they were using colloidal silver, but by day 7, he was clearly going downhill, a big gaping hole you could see right into him. And so we overnighted the vet detox. Obviously, the antibiotics weren't working. I told him to go ahead and give it to him internally, and then also to pack it. So we made the gel, but we didn't do a poultice. They just packed it, okay? From the time they started doing that,
You're ruining the story.
He was totally healed in 2 weeks. Okay, this is the salve. This is a very simple salve, just almond oil and a salve, just a very simple thing to put on. You don't really have to cover it if you're not going to be bumping things. Some people prefer salves over creams. We really lean towards the cream. This puppy is really powerful. These are just two sizes. We use as much of the charcoal of a certain kind that has a very high activity. And we actually have our local vet. There's stories behind her and why she is now using charcoal all the time. And I mean all the time. She is selling it in her clinic. And every time she sutures an animal, she puts this on because they heal so beautifully, and uses it on wounds and whatnot. I also covered just this already. This is a ready-made poultice, okay? So it sticks to you. We call it the charcoal pain patch. Charcoal absorbs toxins and poisons, and you can literally put this over your liver, kidneys, or whatever to pull toxins and poisons. However, for reasons we don't fully understand, charcoal really helps with pain. Okay, so a lot of people who have back pain or even like neck pain, whatever, will use these. We have, when you see people buy these, you know, they try out maybe 1 or 2 patches, and then their next order is 15 or 20, you know that they're working, okay? We have a local gal who is, you know, in her 60s or maybe 70s, and she has to go in for, she's going to get her hip replacement. And she's been waiting. They had put her off, and then it was coming up real quick here, but she's been using the pain patches to get her by, and they called and said, oh, we can get you in earlier, and she said, oh, that's okay, you know, because it's really helping. She's blowing through them, you know, it's a kind of a one-shot deal, but it really helps. I've used it on my wrist, when I broke my wrist twice in the same spot, 6 weeks apart. It really helps, along with comfrey and everything else. So those are the basic products. The only other thing I think that's on the table is the vet wrap. We just use vet wrap, you know, because it's cheap. You kind of go through a lot of it. I don't always use vet wrap. I'll sometimes use the cloth that I can use over and over again. So I think I pretty well covered, except for the hardwood. I didn't cover this one. So this is a hardwood. This one is actually made in America, and this has a very high surface area. Charcoal can be steam activated or it can be chemically activated. To get hardwood, to get the high surface area, basically has to be chemically activated. Now, chemical sounds pretty bad, but the chemical is phosphoric acid, the same stuff that's in soda pop. And so they increase the surface area by that, however they learn to do all this. They increase the surface area, and then they wash the charcoal as well with water and such. So, but that is how they are able to get hardwood. There are steam-activated charcoal powders, but then their surface area is going to be very low, okay? And so this has a very high surface area. And this charcoal made from hardwood is considered mesoporous. It can capture a wide variety of molecule sizes quite easily, okay? It can capture, so this will, if you go on our website under videos, okay, you can watch a video where we use this one. It may have a different color on the jar, but it is this topical first aid. We just did a rebranding. So we have grape juice, we have a few filters, coffee filters we use. We use quite a few of them because we have to really make it grab. And you just pour the grape juice into this powder, okay, that has the filter, and it'll come out white. But it'll still taste like grape juice, 100%. It just removes the color. And that gives you an idea of why charcoal helps whiten teeth. So, and we have like over 150 products on our website. So this is just a small sampling.
Okay, well that raises more questions. And we're going to try and cover some other aspects of charcoal, not just healing, but we're going to talk about animals, of course. But one of the biggest uses of charcoal is actually for odor control. Can you imagine being in a spacesuit up in space and you can't open a window if you pass a little gas? You know, that that could wear out. That could wear you out. So they have charcoal filters in spacesuits. They have charcoal filters in hazmat suits. They have charcoal fabric in military NBC suits. And we'll cover some of those aspects as well. I have one question that's been put up here already. So again, if you have any questions, write them down, and we'll go over those as we go along. Kimberly, can I get you to move these things off this area here for me? Now, let's say you were in Hurricane, that's a long time ago, Hurricane Katrina. How long was that?
2008 or...
Anyway, I just remembered that it was really bad, and one of the things that people did not have was drinking water. With all that water around from the hurricane, you'd think they would have had water to drink, but it wasn't so because the water was contaminated. And yet, all this bottled water that you buy, it's at one stage or another, it's gone through a charcoal filter. So, how do you use something black, gritty, chalky to make white, clear water to drink? So, every time you drink some water, just think, that's it. Am I losing my voice? So when Europeans came across the big ocean, how were they going to keep that water fresh for months on end so they didn't go rancid? And they would scorch the inside of these water barrels.
We're not seeing it up here.
I'm sorry?
We're not seeing your...
What are you seeing? You seeing me?
Yeah, we're not seeing the slides.
Okay, so let me see what's happening here. Sorry about that. I didn't change anything from last night, so we're not seeing the...
So it's coming up on this one.
It's coming up on that screen, but not on this screen. Still nothing?
Nope.
Still the same? So we should have a slide up here that looks like a water barrel. Anyway, while they're working on that, you can imagine, you've seen wood stave barrels, whiskey barrels. You've probably seen commercials where they scorch them for better whiskey. Anyway, that's what they would do with these wood stave barrels on the way over from Europe to America. They would scorch them, and that was very primitive water filter. That kept the water fresh for months on end. Can you imagine? Now, that actually was not something new. It was actually going on for millennia, because they've since found these Syrophoenician ships in the Mediterranean, and they found these same water containers scorched to be able to keep the water fresh. So it's an old technology to cover the seas of the world, the oceans of the world. If you wanted to go travel the oceans, you had to take charcoal along. You had to take charcoal along to be able to keep your water fresh. Well, what about the oceans of space? Anybody have any idea how much 1 quart of water costs US dollars to blast into space? Or actually 1 pound of anything to blast it into space is going to cost anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 US tax dollars to put it up into space. So like any kind of payload, whether it's water or whether it's air, what are they going to do with that water in the air after they drink it once? Are they going to open up something and chuck it? No, they're going to recycle it. I'm sure you're getting the picture here, that they're going to recycle it many, many times because they don't want to waste our US tax dollars, right? And guess what? One of the filters, not the only filter, but one of the filters, both for air and water, is charcoal. So whether it's the oceans down here or the oceans up there, Nobody's going to go anywhere without charcoal. In fact, we sold some product for our first prototype for an odor control bag on the first manned flight to Mars. And I mentioned that, we don't have tickets, but charcoal already has a reserved seat on the first manned flight to Mars because odor becomes a problem very quickly if you don't have something to remove it. And here again in International Space Station. So are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the U.S. cavalry in the 1800s, they would come up to a swamp and they would need to make some water. This is actually, I was invited to write an article for Mother Earth News, and this is some of the graphics that we used in that article. They would come up and they make a primitive crib with 3 compartments. In the first compartment, they would put rocks. And the second compartment was sand, and the third compartment was just charcoal. What kind of charcoal? Not charcoal briquettes. It's just lump charcoal, which I'm glad the pastor wanted me to remind you all that when I was talking about charcoal yesterday for medicinal use, I'm talking about lump charcoal, not charcoal briquettes that you're going to be doing barbecues with. So is everybody clear on that point? That when I was saying charcoal, I'm talking about the stuff from a fire pit, a wood stove, something like that. Okay, not charcoal briquettes. So in that third compartment, they would have this. They'd have this charcoal, different sizes, and the water was put into the first compartment so that the water it entered through the bottom, and it percolated up through the rocks, and that removed any of the big debris. And then it flowed over into the sand, the middle one, and that would take out the smaller debris. And then it would come up through the charcoal in the third compartment, and that would take out bad odor and bad flavor and any pigment that might be in that swamp water. And then, was it ready to drink? No, it had to be boiled. So this is just purifying the water so it makes it more palatable and clean to the eye, and the person's more likely to drink it. But it's still not sterile, and you have to boil the water. And how long do you have to boil water to sterilize it? Anybody have an idea? Bring it to a rolling boil, and that's good enough. And we'll show you something later, but the bacteria hide behind the cloud particles in the water, and that's what makes them, could be lethal. Once you take away with that dust in the water, there's no place for the bacteria to hide, and what kills it? So if you expose that same water, if you can't boil it, you expose it to sunlight, the sunlight will kill that bacteria. And this has been substantiated in laboratories that will leave you with pure drinkable water. And here's something some people use nowadays. They catch rainwater and they put a charcoal bag in the gutter or in the downspout or in the wood stave barrel. And as the water's passing through, you're already starting off with relatively clean air that hopefully hasn't been contaminated with chemtrails, but most likely there's probably something drifting onto your roof from someplace you don't know, some fire in Canada or some volcano somewhere around the other side of the world. It's all ending up on your roof, and when it rains, it goes where? Into that barrel. But if you were in Katrina, you didn't have good water to drink. And so here is something that you can use as a survival technique, right? To get you through a time when you might not have water to drink. And we're talking, the first time I saw this used, I was living in Puerto Rico, and we were out in the hill country. Marie, you were there. You visited us. And we had a spring well with the purest water on the island. It was just delightful to drink. But on one occasion, we had to go visit some people in another part of the island, and we had already heard the reputation was that water in Ponce was bad. It looked bad, and it smelled bad, and it tasted bad. But our host was actually an electrical engineer for the city of Ponce, which had a very large population then. And when we got there, we had forgotten to bring along our own spring water. And finally, I got so thirsty, I felt like I had to drink something. So I asked my host, do you have any water? Oh yeah, go to the fridge and just help yourself. So I went to the fridge, opened the fridge up. He says, it's in the front beaker. And I opened it up, and there was a beaker there, and I just closed the door. I was not going to drink it because it was hazy black. And he said, no, it's fine. Just pour yourself a glass, and it's fine. And he was an engineer. I figured he knew what he was talking about. It was for himself, not just for guests. And I poured in front was this beaker, and it was very cloudy and dark, and I poured it out into a glass, and it tasted like our spring water. Is there any flavor in that charcoal water that you drank? Those of you who had some yesterday? There was no flavor. And it had no flavor either. It was very tasty water, and I asked, well, what did you do with this? And he said, well, I put some charcoal in that beaker behind that one, and I looked down, and sure enough, here's another beaker with a big chunk of charcoal, and that was his water filter. Now, here's a techie guy. He knows science and physics, and this is long before all these nice chrome water filters that we have today, and that was his solution to contaminated water. And that water, the city water, like I said, it was so heavily chlorinated, it was just, you couldn't stomach it. It was so bad. So here's a survival technique. Thankfully, we don't all have to depend on this, but if for some reason you have water issues, charcoal will help you not only with the bottled water, but with your survival water as well. A lot of our customers are preppers or survivalists, and they'll buy buckets and buckets of granular charcoal to be able to filter their swimming pool water if need be, and in a time of emergency. So they're thinking ahead if something happens like Katrina or something else, that they have something that they can filter their water with. We have a friend of ours. He's a Foursquare minister, and he supports water wells for Africa. And he goes into remote areas, and he orchestrates drilling these wells for villages where they have to walk 2-3 miles one way to be able to carry a 5-gallon bucket back for their family's needs for the day. And so trying to offset that tremendous burden on these villages, they go in and drill water wells. Well, in the process of this, I don't know, he went online and he found us, and he just became a charcoal missionary as well, not only drilling wells and not only promoting the gospel, but also promoting charcoal for health reasons. And on our website, he's sent us a whole bunch of stories how he's used charcoal. Yeah, I believe it's in Tanzania that he's working. And while he was there, plastic water bottles are everywhere. And they're a nuisance. They're a nuisance everywhere. And he came up with this very simple technique. This was before they were posted on YouTube. Now they're all over YouTube. But he came up with this idea where he cuts the top off of a plastic bottle, cut the funnel end. He punches some holes in the bottom of the jar. He inverts the top and puts it in the top. There's a video. Actually, you can go on our website and see him doing it. He's going down to the city park in LA, and there's a fountain there, and he's got 2 5-gallon buckets, and he gets a stick and he moves the dead turtle to one side, and he moves all the other dirty stuff to one side, and then he takes 2 5-gallon pails and takes it back to his house, and he does this silent video. There's no talking in it because he wants it to be universal, and he breaks up a few pieces of charcoal, that big piece I showed you in the previous slide, and with some cloth and some charcoal and some cloth and the funnel on top, then he pours in this ugly water into the top of this thing, and guess what comes out the other end? You think this has got to be black magic, right? Because how could this filthy water, just by pouring it through this simple filter, come out clear? And then he goes to drink it, and he said, no, you don't drink it yet. It's still not safe. And so he caps these bottles, and he puts them on a tin roof. I can't remember how long he puts it on there, for a couple hours, and it explains why it works. shows the lab study that showed that it was pure. And sure enough, the sunshine finishes off disinfecting the water. People have asked us about activated charcoal. So we have charcoal, right? From your wood stove, your fire pit, wherever you've got it, you've got these black, crusty pieces of charcoal. They were wood at one point, and now they're charcoal. And industrially, you can't really make it in your home. You'll go on YouTube and you'll see all these survivalists saying, well, we're making activated charcoal and so forth. And it's just pulling on our strings because it's not activated charcoal. Charcoal has, out of a wood pit, might have a surface area between 300 and 400 meters per gram. An activated carbon, like Kimberly showed you here, can go up, as she mentioned, 1,600 meters. So 1 teaspoon of charcoal powder, the size, if you could magically unfold that, there's about the size of a football field in surface area out of 1 teaspoon. Well, where is it? It's not on the outside. Where is it? It's on the inside. And that's what the activation process does. It reheats this charcoal. They run it through this kiln at very high temperatures, nothing that you can approach in a kitchen stove. This is like 700 to 800 plus degrees Celsius. So it's far beyond what you're going to do in your kitchen stove. I don't care what they say online. It's not the complete truth. I'm not saying it won't work. I believe it will work, but it's not activated charcoal. Okay? And they'll do little processes of mixing in phosphoric acid and so forth, still not activated. Even though they're using these very, very, very mild acids and washing the product, it's not activated because you have to get this thing still up to about anywhere between 400 and 600 Celsius, and our stoves don't achieve those kind of temperatures. So for the price of it, buy activated charcoal. And on our website, I actually have a video showing how you can make your own charcoal simply. On YouTube, there's all kinds of videos showing you how to make charcoal. And you can come up with your own. When I lived in Africa, and also, I didn't see them doing it in Nepal, but they did. Charcoal's everywhere for sale, but they would build they'd cut up these sticks and put them into a pile, like a mound. Sometimes they would carve out some earth a little bit first to create a pit, and then they would put leaves on top of that, and then dirt on top of that. And they would start the fire, and it would be a live fire, and then pretty soon you could see just smoke is coming off and vapor is coming off. You can see steam coming off, but it's no longer an open flame. It's cooking that wood and converting it to pure carbon. All the moisture, water is cooked off. A lot of the other, what they call volatiles, are vaporized off, and you're left with basically pure carbon. And Kimberly asked, what's the difference between when you see activated carbon and activated charcoal on the internet? They're the same animal, but oftentimes in industrial applications, they'll refer to it as activated carbon, meaning that it's not from a renewable resource. So it may be coming from coal. Not necessarily, but there's a good chance it's coming from coal or petroleum products, and so they'll typically call it activated carbon. It could be coming from a vegetable source, but technically that's why they use that phrase. But for our use, basically the same. So here's this giant kiln that's about 200 feet long, about 30 feet in diameter, and it's cooking charcoal, and this is a rotisserie. It's slowly turning. It goes one end charcoal, and it comes out the other end activated charcoal. And then they grind it, and they size it for different applications. And we carry, I don't know, she's always buying some new carbon or charcoal, so I'm out of date, but I think we carry about 30 different kinds of grades of activated charcoal. But industrially, there's over at least 250 different grades of activated charcoal that are used for very, very specific applications. And we'll just touch base on some of those applications. Water filters come in all kinds now. This is a refillable one, so if you, rather than getting a cartridge that you throw the cartridge away, and buy a new cartridge. They also have these ones that are refillable, so you buy a bucket of charcoal and then you refill them yourself however often. And the best way to tell if a filter's finished working, you'll notice the flavor. Probably within 24 hours, whether it's an air filter or a water filter, your nose or your taste buds will tell you that charcoal is used up and it's time to change it. And that from that time on, you basically set yourself a schedule on your calendar that every 3 months, 4 months, whatever, you're going to change out that charcoal, even if you haven't detected a change in taste or odor. So this is just some of the ones that we carry, but there are probably thousands of water filters out there. We supply charcoal for industrial applications of water filters and chemical filters, but we also offer some of these for residential whole house or point of use water filters. We sell charcoal for aquariums, not just the smaller kinds, but we also supply charcoal for municipal aquariums across the United States. Some of the larger ones purchase from us as well. Here is the Bangor, Maine wastewater treatment facility. They contacted us and said, we want to do a PR program for our community showing that the wastewater is suitable for drinking. And so they came up with an experiment, and they purchased charcoal from us, and they raised salmon smelt, East Coast salmon smelt, in this wastewater that had been treated with charcoal to prove to everybody that the water coming out of their facility is safe. Not necessarily safe to drink, but it's not bringing the pollutants along with it. Because you can imagine the buildup of pollutants in wastewater, right? Waste is, and then it's handed down into the river, and it goes down the river, and it's sucked up by another municipality. It's used, and it's dumped into the river again. It goes downstream. It's sucked up by another municipality, and so forth, so on down the river.
Just a quickie. We just had a cute one from a customer. He had a fish, and it was dying. And so he just couldn't bear to watch it die. So he took some charcoal powder and put it in his fish bowl and stirred it around. And
I think he even covered it with a cloth because he didn't want to see the poor thing die.
He didn't want to see it die. And anyway, charcoal's not soluble, so it's going to sink to the bottom. So as it sunk to the bottom, it was just cleaning the water. And in the morning, his fish was as healthy as all get out and just swimming around. So that's pretty sweet. And also, when it comes to fish, we tend to sell a special one that has bone char in it. And we have learned so much from our customers and such. But bone char will remove heavy metals really quickly. Okay, it doesn't do anything else. It's not a replacement for charcoal.
Okay, so she's mentioned bone charcoal. She just threw something in the mix here. Bone charcoal is really not a true charcoal in the same sense, but it's referred to as bone char or bone charcoal, and it's used in filters as well.
Yeah, and it removes heavy metals and fluoride, and that's the secret to having your fish live a long time. Yeah. Is to add bone char to your filters. We have that from a good source. I just forgot something I was going to tell you. We'll come back to it, I'm sure. So bottled water, swimming pools, International Space Station, water in spacesuits, and as I mentioned already, to blast 1 liter of water into space, $8,000 to $10,000 US tax dollars. We demonstrated drinking charcoal water last night. Did everybody get a chance? Everybody's been proofed, tested? Yes? Do I see any no's? Yeah. Where? Nobody get it? Who has not yet had? I saw your sister. Did she get you some? What? Why don't you, Why don't you come on up, sweetie? Oh, come on up. Big sister, why don't you take her by the hand and bring her on up here and make her a charcoal drink? Even if your sister?
Oh, come on. Okay, she's just a little bit shy at this moment. But Mama, you got to teach her, sister, you got to teach her to drink some charcoal water, right? So put a little bit of, what do we suggest? Because it has no flavor, do what? Put a little bit of what in it? Some lemon or lime in the water, or mix it with a little bit of grape juice, color it, whatever you want to do. But once she tries it a few times at home, it's a little bit awkward up here maybe, but once she does it at home, because if you have to go to the hospital for accidental poisoning, they're going to give you charcoal water, and a lot more than we're demonstrating up here, because if you don't, there's a good chance you might not survive the night. Because all modern hospitals, for severe food poisoning, I've had severe food poisoning where I've been in a fetal position on the floor for hours, retching and vomiting, and my wife gave me I got histoplasmosis one time. Anybody know what that is? That's like from bird droppings. It's a noxious thing. And I've been cleaning out a chicken hatchery, and I got histoplasmosis. I was happy to die. But Kimberly finally made a poultice, because remember she just talked about the woman, did you? Yeah. You talked about the woman who was drinking charcoal, but it didn't work, but then when she made the poultice, I don't know what the difference is. You'd think taking it internally, right, would work faster than a poultice. She poured lots of charcoal down me, and I finally, she made a poultice, and I think in 5 minutes, the pain had subsided. So again, you need to learn, sweetie, to try some charcoal. Mama, you make sure she learns how to use this. Because what if you become a nurse, right? What if maybe you want to become a nurse or a doctor one day, right? Well, you don't know. You're young. And if your sister does, she's going to give it to you anyway. So.
I thought we had to put vitamin C with that.
Okay, last night I was talking about using it for dementia, Alzheimer complex, and it's charcoal, but there's a little bit of a protocol for doing it, and it has not yet been actually made. We've been invited to start making the product. When we go home, we'll start working with encapsulators to make this product available, and then you'll see it advertised, and it will be advertised on our website, but as of yet, it's still not there. So here's my friend, Leo. He's in Alaska. I can't keep track of that family. She was a head nurse all up and down the west coast of America, Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, Korea, head nurse. And they have plenty of stories. She has plenty of stories of emergency use of activated charcoal for people brought in with drug overdose or whatever. And of course, what they give them is charcoal. So here is Leo taking some charcoal powder, and what do you put in the glass first, water or charcoal? Water. And then the charcoal, and you gradually stir it in, and you just stir it in, and then just be a man and drink it back. This is Leo. And one time, Leo and Pauline and the kids were out camping. This was in Hawaii. He told me this story. I think it's in the book. And Josh got bitten by a bumblebee. And the nurse freaked out because her son was having an anaphylactic reaction, and all she could think about was, we got to get this kid to a hospital now. And Leo went over to where the fire pit was, got out some charcoal, ground it up, and added a little bit of water, gave it to Josh. In 5 minutes, it was over. 5 minutes. You know, they could have been rushing to the hospital while Pauline was sweating, you know. And here it was right there. One of God's remedies, right? Within reach and also affordable anywhere on planet Earth. Well, going from Hawaii, this is some jungle in Uganda, and we had talked a little bit about what I just said now for upset stomach, and a very common gastrointestinal infections or upset is very, very common. Contaminated water, contaminated food, and so forth. And so it's sort of a way of life. You kind of go with a little bit of trepidation. And while we were there, HIV is very prominent. In this particular community, it's probably a number one cause of death, followed by dysentery. And so we had been invited in to speak and teach, and we're at this school, this little school mission clinic compound, and they advertised it, and people started coming, and at some point, I think I said this, are there anybody here? Okay,
anyway,
correction.
he had the slide that you just previously saw, and there's interpreters, and so he said, just be a man and drink it back. And he said, now, are there any men? And so he invited all the men, and the women just charged up.
This is who came up.
I just cracked up.
So the women came up, they were ready to experiment. Women are typically more ready to experiment with health issues because who's usually the primary caregiver in a home? Grandma, auntie, mommy. They're typically the ones who are going to be the administrators. Us guys were a little bit slow on the draw. So I called up the men, and there's only one man that came up. The rest were all women. And we did not have activated charcoal. We'd already taken the trouble to buy some charcoal for cooking, not briquettes, just lump charcoal. And we'd had some people pound it and sift it. They have two flour sifters in that part of the country, a coarse and a fine flour sifter. And so they would pound it through the first sifter and then through the second sifter, and whatever's left over, they pounded it again, and they kept sifting it. And it was fine for there. I mean, but it was a lot grittier than what we've been giving you. So you had been grinding like sand in your mouth if we'd been giving you that stuff. But they were happy to take it. And so it works very well for vomiting and for diarrhea, which is associated with a lot of health conditions. How about malaria? Does malaria have vomiting? And I've had malaria twice. I've had dysentery, amoebic dysentery. It's no fun. It really is no fun. And your body has a hard time recovering when you're trying to get rid of this stuff, right, out of your one end or the other. And you can get run down very quickly. And cholera will take somebody down in less than 24 hours. So it's critical that you get something in there to stop that vomiting, but that's not the solution yet. You still have to do one more thing with severe vomiting and diarrhea. What do you do? Called what? Not call 911. Well, you've got to hydrate them, but typically they'll use hydration salts. And so because they're losing not just losing fluids, they're losing electrolytes as well. So if you have this severe kind of condition, okay, give them charcoal, but mix up some salt water, mineral water, boiled first and cooled off before you give that to them. Or here we have if you can get to a pharmacy, you can get it there, right? So that's, when I was working out in the Pacific, we were sailing from island to island in a small sailboat doing development work, and we were on one island, and I talked with the community nurse, and I said, do you ever have any instances to use charcoal? And I knew she did not have access to activated charcoal, and she said, yeah, actually, just recently, I had a patient who had cholera. He was not going to survive, and I made charcoal for him, and he survived. Now, there's another story that goes along with that one. We had sailed into this island. I think it was called, it wasn't Abamama. Anyway, it was a beautiful lagoon, turquoise, looked like the purest water on planet Earth. And that night, they brought us to this giant community center, and it was what they call a maniaba, and it's made out of coconut fronds, and you have to bend over to go underneath the edge of it, because outside it can be hot and humid, but underneath that maniaba, it's very cool. They do weddings there, funerals there, jury trials and court cases. Everything goes on underneath this maniaba. And because we were guests, white guests coming ashore, they wanted to welcome us. And so they brought the local pastor, minister, was invited to give an inspirational talk and welcome to us. And so he came in, and he was like this, and just limped in. I knew this poor man, he's in a lot of pain. And so he talked, for about 10, 15 minutes, and I could tell he was very sore. And it had to do something with his foot because he was limping. And after the meeting, I went up to him and said, Pastor, I said, what is wrong? And he said, oh, I have not been able to sleep for weeks. I'm in so much pain. I said, what's wrong? He says, my big toe is so sore. It's inflamed, and it gives me no rest. We've tried all kinds of things. And so when I looked at his foot and here's this big toe, what would you have thought of? You've heard about this before, right? So I thought, I wasn't sure, but I suspected it was gout. Now, we were actually going to do a foot bath with charcoal, but I don't think it's going to work here. I think I'll tell you, and Pastor, I'm going to demonstrate it on you, but it's going to be a dry run. So I'm going to have you come up here in this chair, sit down, and you're going to take your shoes off and your socks off. Pardon? Yeah, right here. So, Pastor, I'm going to ask you to take your shoes off, sit down. One or two? Both shoes. Now, I didn't know. Now, I don't think all of you are Seventh-day Adventists, but in this particular church, they have a foot washing service, so this is nothing new for them. They do a foot washing service here. So, I had no charcoal. I had some activated charcoal, but I was not going to waste it on a warm foot bath. So I was going down the trail. When we came to the meeting that evening, I was going down the trail, and I noticed there had been a fire in the brush. And when the pastor told me what the problem was, I went back down the trail, and I got out my knife, and I cut off some of the branches, the scorched branches. I cut them off, and I took them with me when I went back to this village. And I got to not really a village, it was sort of a compound, and they had all these little huts around. And I got a basin like this, and I filled it up. I had the wife make some warm water. And then I put the warm water down, and I took those branches, and I scraped off the charcoal, off those branches, into the water. And it was warm water, and then I just took his feet, and I put it into the warm water, and you use your hand as a thermometer, so you don't want to burn the pastor. It's not good. So put your hand on the bottom. If it's not too hot for your hand, it's not too hot for him, and you put it in the warm water, and you do the same with the other foot. Make sure that your hand touches the water first, and you just leave him there. And then, since he was a pastor, I knew he wouldn't mind, so I had a prayer with him. And I really believe that prayer, there's some sort of science there. I don't fully understand it, but I've seen it work before. So we use prayer, ask God to bless this treatment, and I had some charcoal tablets, and I gave him a handful of charcoal tablets. And I said, good night. And I went back to our little hut, and I slept there. In the morning, I was curious. They had invited me for breakfast the next morning, and when I walked down the trail, what did I see? Here's the pastor. It was so, wow. It was so exciting when you see something like that happen, and you've prayed and you ask God to bless, but there's still this lingering little bit of doubt. Is this really going to work? We're a long ways away from anything here. But it worked. It was very gratifying. And he said, I slept all night long. Wow. Isn't that wonderful? And the pastor is always an influential person in a community where the priest I was able to talk to a Catholic priest in a prison in Kenya. He asked me about it. He was just going into this large prison, and he's tell me about this charcoal. And so, people of the cloth, they have a lot of influence. And if they can teach it in their village or their community, something so simple as this, wow, isn't that amazing? think of how many people can be affected. Well, thank you, Pastor. I'm going to actually, in a few minutes, I'm going to have you come up and make a charcoal poultice. So we were on this island and we sailed off. We sailed off into the sunset, and we arrived at my home for the next 6 months. And this island was right on the equator. But before we left the previous island, as I was walking out to get onto the boat, I stubbed my toe. That's all I did, was stub my toe. And I walked out into that beautiful blue water, and I got on the sailboat and we sailed off into the sunset. And we arrived at the next island after sunset, and we had to anchor, and we anchored on top of the reef, and all night long, all you could hear was and I thought, this is where I'm going to die. Shipwreck out here on a coral reef. Anyway, we made it to the island, and the next week, I got something happened to my big toe, and it started swelling, and I knew it was not gout. And I ended up getting a strep infection. It's commonly known as flesh-eating disease. That's amazing stuff. I could almost watch it eat holes in my leg. It started on my foot, and within hours it had come up to my knee, and I took this very knife, and I would use the pliers. I was almost delirious, and I would use these pliers to pull the dead flesh out of my leg because it was happening so fast. And I made peace with God because I was sure I was not going to make it through to the next morning. I had a running extreme fever, and the last one was right here. The one on my knee, I could see down to the bone. It was amazing, and the pain was. I could not deal with pain. I'm not a great pain dealer, but this took me to the limits I never guessed that was possible. It might approach to having a baby. I don't know. Never had a baby, so. I delivered 2 babies. The mother said she did it, but I helped. That was a lot of pain. And at some point, this thought came into my mind, put charcoal on it. And I put it on other people, and I wasn't thinking myself, and I was delirious. I was starting to hallucinate a bit, and I somehow gathered up enough strength to make charcoal, and I just put it on. No bandages, no poultices, just put it on. And within an hour, I knew the infection had stopped. The pain had not stopped at all. The pain went on for weeks, if not months. It took me weeks for that flesh to heal back in, but the infection stopped in its tracks. Now, how could charcoal do that? Now, over the years, because I've seen this happen so many times, not just for us, but for other people and animals, one day I asked myself the question, do bacteria have teeth? Think about it before you answer. How big are bacteria? Small, right? Very small. You have to look at them through a what? Microscope. They're so small. But when they look at these microscopic microbes, do they have teeth? No teeth. So how do they bite and chew their food if they don't have teeth? They secrete poisons. And these poisons are called endo or inside or exotoxins, and those dissolve tissue. And then they assimilate the nutrient, right? And they grow and reproduce extremely fast. And when you introduce the charcoal binds the toxin that dissolves the flesh, and they don't have anything to bite and chew the food with anymore, and they starve to death. They start starving to death within a half an hour to an hour. Because you'll see this on almost any kind of wound. Now, you're not going to read this in a textbook. This is just John Dinsley philosophy here, anatomy and physiology, but I've seen too many wounds do this. They just It seems like they stop in their tracks. They don't heal up overnight. The progression stops. And within 24 hours, you're going to start seeing new tissue along the outside of that wound. Just like that one I started off the program with last night, the guy that had that massive diabetic ulcer on his leg. By that point, you could see there was at least almost a full inch of new tissue around that open wound. There was still granulation happening in the wound itself, but you could see it was healing mostly from the outside in, and as it heals from the outside in, it pushes the charcoal off. So more and more, I'm willing, if the person is willing, I'll put the charcoal directly on the wound, rather than using a bandage or a poultice, but a poultice or one of these miracle patches that Kimberly showed are so convenient. I'd much rather use that, especially with somebody who's not familiar with it, and I have to break down that prejudice and put a bandage on, because people are more open to bandages. So I've learned firsthand, I'm not the best example of staying healthy, but I can tell you in the last 50 years I've not used any drugs for malaria, dysentery, crack, ribs and bones, histoplasmosis, pneumonia, and the list goes on of things that between us we've experienced and relied on some simple natural remedy that God has made available to us. If it wasn't charcoal, there was something else. And whether it's aloe vera, moringa leaf, or something like that. So I want to encourage you, in the pain, charcoal did nothing for the pain. And yet here we are telling you that charcoal works for pain. It did not that time. It really, pain can humble you like nothing else. Isn't that true? Oh yes, it turns you into a baby. And but then we can rely on who? Our Heavenly Father. And He can get us through because He cares for you. Okay, I've been talking for a while, but let me just finish with this story, and then Kimberly, I'm going to have you come up and do I want you to make a poultice, and you demonstrated it last night for the eyes, right? I want you to do it again, but I want one of the young people. There was a young boy here. Where is he? He's not you. Who's hiding? I've already seen you. Do you want me to ask your mother to bring you up here? Come on up here. Come on. Look, we put on a program. Come on, you look brave enough. You're a God-be man. Come on up here. Thank you so much for helping me. You're going to watch. Actually, all I'm going to ask you to do is watch Kimberly. She's going to make one, and I want you just to stand by her. She's going to make one. We're going to put you in a chair, and then you're going to lean back like we did last night, and we're going to put one on your eyes. And then we have a volunteer. First, but no, I want you to stay for the moment. Come on up here and just watch Kimberly, and she's going to put it on your eyes, okay? Yeah, come on up. What's his name? Okay, come on up. Thanks. Okay, you're not going to make one, but we're going to put you in that chair, and then you're going to lean back. When she's all done, and she's going to put it over your eyes. That's all she's going to do, okay? Now, actually, did you leave any of those other ones up here? Well, here's an iPad, not made by Mac, but made by Kimberly. And, and basically that's what she's going to do. She's going to lay it on your eyes, okay? So watch her. Watch what she's doing. You're going to have to repeat this maybe one day.
Okay, so just a repeat of what we did last night.
How much water?
Quarter cup of water.
Quarter cup. How much? Quarter cup.
Very
Okay.
good. Okay, and then we're going to use 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed.
How many?
2 tablespoons.
How many?
He was asking you. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a very convenient 2 tablespoon scoop that they provided for us. I really like this. I gotta get one.
That's ours.
Okay, so that's that. And then we're gonna run out here.
I'll go get another one.
That's okay.
Marie, can you get us another green jar
We've got enough.
of topical powder, please?
Okay, and then 2 tablespoons.
How many? How many? 2 tablespoons?
And we'll just put that right on top there.
Okay.
Okay, and then it's always a good idea to put the cap on the charcoal right away.
Okay, right there?
Put the,
There we go, okay.
right away. And then we're just going to slowly stir.
How is she going to stir it? Slowly.
Why? Why do you think I'm slowly stirring it instead of doing it really fast?
It'll jump out of the dish.
It'll just,
Charcoal is put in fireworks. It's put in modern pyrotechnics. You've seen those? All those different colors. Charcoal is one of the things that make it glow
that's it.
and burn.
And so now it's just a really,
So it has this kind of a explosive
sort of like a
characteristic.
gel, a mud.
Show him. Show him.
Just like that.
See that? Okay.
Is it gross? Yeah, it's kind of cool,
See?
isn't it?
Now, because it's already ground, we're using cold water, but you could use warm water or hot water, and it will gel even faster. Okay?
And that's it. And all we're going to do is,
Paper towel?
Yep. Oh, it feels weird you doing that, hubby. Okay. We can use half of this, or we can use all of it. This can actually make a fairly large poultice. And we've been doing a lot of eyes, and everybody has eye issues. Does somebody want to share a little short testimony on using the iPad last night? You shared with me you had that one eye condition.
Here she goes.
Here, okay, cool.
I don't like these things either.
Yep, just share away.
I have something called Fuchs dystrophy, and I'm scared of it. Anyway, my eyes look like orange pills, where most people's look like grapes. The eye doctor said there's no cure for it, other than the grace of God. But I used the poultice that she made last night, and this morning was the first morning I got been able to get it, but not have blurred vision. And that was just with one use.
There you go. Now, you see what you could do, right? You've washed it. So keep watching her.
Okay, and then we're just going to go, then just fold it up, north, west, east, south, and you can make it as big as you want. This is kind of a little bigger than what we need for the eyes, but it would still work. And so you can see that it's really moist,
Come on
right?
over and touch it. Just touch it.
So
It won't bite.
It's very moist. Okay.
See? It's
It's
moist.
very moist.
Yeah.
This is actually perfect. Okay, if it was a little on the dry side, we could just take a little water and dribble it on. Okay. and
Okay,
now-
come on with me. All you got to do is sit down. Here. Sit down. And just, come on, lean your head back just a little bit. Okay.
Sorry, ever on the computer? Are you ever on the computer? On the phone and such like that? Well, it's really hard on your eyes. Did you know that? Do you sometimes have sore eyes after you've been on the
Yes.
iPad or the computer?
Everybody nods.
Okay, and so activated charcoal that's made from coconut shell can actually absorb radiation, but it can pull the poisons that are causing inflammation also. So we're going to put this over your eyes, and it will feel really good. It's a little on the cooler side. These are really nice to make very, very warm, okay? And when you put the really warm charcoal iPad or poultice, either one, on your eyes, it feels so good. But even the cool feels really nice.
So if you have like radiation from chest x-ray, you put a
Oh, yes.
Okay, so the question is, if you've been exposed to some radiation, maybe from an X-ray, can you put a charcoal poultice on that? I'm holding your head, so you're fine. Let me just answer that by I had mentioned these doctors that we trained with, the Thrashes. They actually attended a man at Fort Benning Army Base where they were treating this man who had cancer on his back. He was terminal, but nobody wanted to visit him. The nurses did not want to go near him. His family did not want to go into the same room because the odor was horrible. He had been burned on his back from x-rays, and the flesh would not heal, and the odor was beyond. And they were asked, can they do anything? And they put charcoal powder in a salt shaker with a little bit of rice so it keep it stirred up. You okay? You're getting a little tired? Maybe a little bit. Put your hands use your own hands and hold it up there. Help me. There you go. Not too tight. And they peppered that open wound. The odor was gone within an hour. He still died, but his family was able to visit him. He was self-conscious about the odor. So here he was able to still visit with his family. He didn't have COVID, right? That's probably pretty good enough. Well, thanks.
And then there was
Don't go away because you have a little
a
trouble on
woman
your
in her
face.
early 40s who had brain cancer, and she had her second surgery and was doing radiation. She really didn't
Wipe
want to
your
do the
face on your
radiation,
forehead.
but she was in a situation where they
You see?
insisted that she do the radiation. So what she
Thank
did to
you.
counteract
Appreciate it.
that radiation
I might have you come
treatment
up later. We'll see.
was she actually ended up purchasing, a lot of times people will use the topical hardwood, okay? But she did the detox and cleanse because of how coconut shell absorbs radiation. And so she'd literally make a charcoal mud, and this was some years ago. And at first we did just the charcoal and coconut oil, and that was a horrible mess, just drip, drip, drip. So then we switched to this recipe where we did, so the recipe for it is basically very simple. Half charcoal, half the aloe vera gel. Okay, you can remember that. And that's what we did. Her mother did it for her, but I was constantly in contact with the mother and sometimes with the woman as well. And they just made a mud and then just applied it all over. And then we would take this
You just keep talking, and she's going to make one
press
for
and
us.
seal.
Right?
Okay,
You can do
it's
it,
the
right?
only one that will
You're gonna
work.
make it.
Okay, it's called
I'll
the
help you,
press
okay?
and seal. It's the only one that's going to work of all the plastic wraps. So the
clean
whole
this off
head
a
would be
bit.
covered. She had beautiful red long hair, and just made a mud, get it all over her scalp. Never had to cut her hair, and just wrapped it up and
Where's the
just
quarter
sleep
cup?
with that.
Yep.
Okay. And that
Don't
really
turn it upside
was
down.
amazing. They literally went through buckets
might
of it
escape
because she
on you,
had
right?
this treatment for a long time. And that
How much
is
water
what
do
really
you
helped
use?
and pulled her through for a long time. And
quarter
then there were some fires in California and whatnot, and she succumbed to the smoke.
2 tablespoons.
Just
How
she
much
was
water?
too weak to deal with
Quarter
it.
cup.
But it
you hold
really gave her some longevity
I'm
of
gonna pour it in
life
here,
by
and then
doing
you
this.
Pour it in there.
So yeah, it does help with the radiation.
Okay, keep talking. We're just going to make it.
Do you
Yeah,
want to
just
just
keep talking. Turn-
about?
anything? Turn around.
What?
My daughter was a missionary in India, and she got bit by a venomous scorpion.
How much of this?
Oh, okay. So snake bites are a very common thing.
So this says 2 tablespoons.
Oh, scorpion, but it's like a snake bite. And so we've had brown recluse. I don't know if I've had an actual scorpion story, but the poisons and everything are similar in how it's going to react. Oh, yeah, go ahead. And I'll share on snake bites.
Okay, my daughter, Gabriella, went to India to be a missionary for 3.5 years. She worked at an orphanage, and it was in northern
Just go
India, and where the orphanage was, they had a lot of
Look at
venomous
that. Look at that.
creatures, In fact, there was a king cobra snake under her bed.
There you go.
At night when
Okay.
she was sleeping, rats would run
That's
up
it,
and
that's
down
it.
her walls, but
Okay,
she loved the
good.
children there. But one time she
The
got in
spoon?
bed, there was a black venomous
That's it.
scorpion that bit her. And so she should have been dead, but they put a charcoal poultice on her. And then, I don't know if it was the next day or when, but they took her to the clinic. And the doctor said
That's
that
right.
if she had
That's
not
right.
put that
Just keep
charcoal
stirring.
poultice on, she would have been dead. And then my mother-in-law was bit by a brown recluse spider on her chin.
Keep stirring.
And I don't know if you know anything about brown
Yeah,
recluses,
keep stirring.
but it will destroy all the tissue. Necrosis occurs from the venom of a brown recluse spider. Well, she put a charcoal poultice on that spider bite and no scar. It absorbed all the toxin and point. Amazing, amazing. So it does work.
Yeah, yeah, those.
And I'm thankful for charcoal
Very good.
because without it, my daughter would be dead.
Put that lid back on here. Just put the spoon in here. There you
Yeah, so brown recluse, snake bites. We have, I don't know, John has one on a brown
Okay.
recluse, and we can actually show you how
go. I'm gonna clean
quickly
this charcoal off. and then
it
we're gonna
will
do
destroy the
this together.
tissue and how quickly it will bring you down. Our neighbor is a veterinarian, and she has helped us. We had a product, we don't presently have it anymore, the company went out of business, but we were selling it for a while, and then they said, no, you have to have a veterinarian, you can only buy it through them. And so she agreed, because she bought this product for her clinic. It had charcoal in it and clay, and you would just douse the animals when they were down. And so that was her only association with us at that time. She just agreed as a kind neighbor and just really wasn't on board with charcoal, except for
Two
an
of them.
extreme situation that she
Yeah,
used
do it
it
again.
for. And so anyway, one day she came in and she said, okay, tell me what to do. She says it was her horse
And put
that
another one
had
right
been
next to it.
bit by a rattlesnake. We live in rattlesnake
So normally
country.
you just
And it bit
you
him
take two
on
off.
the nose, and she had given him the anti-venom, and it was
That's good.
not
We're good.
working. And
Now-
so I said, okay, the anti-venom's
We're
not
gonna do it a
working, the
little bit
antibiotics
differently.
aren't working.
want you
Go
to spread
ahead
this
and, you
liquor
you
I'm
have to
putting
give
my
it to
fingers.
him,
I want you to spread it
internally.
on this one.
And you can't give it dry, so she mixed it in with some wet feed. And I said, you need to cover not just the nose, you need to cover his whole head. And we have pictures of
Yeah,
this.
keep going.
And I believe it's in the booklet
Yes.
back there that you can look at his pictures. Anyway, the horse totally pulled
Okay,
through.
now start spreading it out.
But she had given
Spread
it
it
the
out.
anti-venom.
Like you saw Kimberly.
And so she's like, okay, next two, this is common
That's
in
it.
our country.
Okay. So
The
just like
next
this.
two horses that had snake bites, she asked the owners if
So
she
make it
could
kind
just
of
treat
even.
them
See
with
that?
charcoal.
And then down here
Nothing
at the
more than
bottom.
charcoal. She says, I am sure it was a charcoal
it.
because the
That's it.
anti-venom
Yes.
wasn't working. But
Spread
I've
it
got to
out. That's it.
know.
Yes.
And she promised to watch the horses really, really close.
That's
They
good.
agreed,
Okay.
and she only treated them with
that
charcoal,
one in
and they
the dish.
pulled through beautifully. And so, are you going to show the thing on Barney or
I
no,
want you to take,
John?
let's, go ahead and keep talking.
Do you want me to share on Barney?
This is your big chance. Go ahead.
No. Is it on Barney or no? Do you
We'll
have
get
Barney
there.
coming?
It's coming.
So do you want me to share on Barney
We need
or
to
not?
show the pictures.
Okay, so we'll save
got
the one on Barney.
Just kind
But we
of
had
count
an
it
amazing story with
that's
her.
good.
And
Now, do you like
Dr.
Kimberly did?
Regina
Fold
is
this
just
down.
now, every time she sutures
where
an
it's- the
animal,
charcoal
she
starts there?
puts the
Do the
charcoal
same, so
cream
you're
on
gonna
it.
fold it right about here.
And
Fold it
she's
up.
giving
That's
the
it. Very good.
tablets
You-
and capsules
then
to
right,
the
do the
dogs.
side.
She is now taking charcoal on a daily
Okay.
basis
A little bit too
herself.
far.
And
see
it's
why?
just been really
Yeah.
kind of
Do the same on the
exciting.
other end.
So anybody else have any, just ask me,
Okay.
because charcoal has probably affected it. Do you have any
So you can put it on somebody? You wanna
situations?
put it on
Yes.
yours? You want us to put it on you? You want me to put it on you? You'll
So
have
she
to.
asked, can you mix charcoal with castor oil? Yeah, you can. You can. It's something I don't always recommend because when you do it for whatever reason, the charcoal will get very warm, and some people don't, if they're really sick, don't really appreciate that. But you can mix the charcoal with castor oil. Some people really love olive oil, coconut oil, whatever you want. But if you're putting it on your head and you're not wrapping it or whatever, the oils get very, not castor oil because it's so thick, but a lot of the other oils. Now, the one thing to always remember about charcoal, there's no nutritional value to charcoal, zero, nothing. But remember that it's not going to absorb your nutrients or minerals.
I'm gonna hold your
So when you're
glasses for a
using
few minutes.
essential oils or whatever,
And you're just
it's
gonna put
not
your
going
hands on
to
the outside
wreck
of the
your
hole in place.
essential
Just
oils,
hold it.
okay? It will sometimes diminish the scent, but not, you'll have to use more than normal. And what are we doing here? We're just making a charcoal poultice and placing it over.
She did pretty good, didn't she? First time, right?
And when you're putting it on, you want to make sure that you're pressing against your eyes and making that really good contact. You just really have to try this because the charcoal over the eyes is absolutely so soothing, and we're just getting so bombarded with radiation and all kinds of, damage to our eyes nowadays, even the young children. Oh, question.
Okay.
What?
Will that hold it there now? Is that good?
Yesterday I was
Not too
feeling
tight.
good, and when I left here and I get up in the morning, I was not feeling good at all.
Is that a little too tight?
And I want to comment.
Say that again.
So I
Is
did
it screening a
that,
little too much? Okay.
and I sit down in front of the sun.
How's that? Is that
And I
okay?
say, Lord, help me because I want to be in the, today, yesterday and today, and only you will be there, here. So, and I did, and I get out there, I did it.
See, you've got to you got to tell your patient
By sitting in the sun.
to instruct you. Is that too tight? Is it okay? It's good. Okay.
Charcoal. I have tried charcoal for many times, but like this I didn't, and it worked very good. Also, my granddaughter,
It did or didn't?
it worked.
Oh, it worked. Okay.
It worked great.
It feels really soothing. We had a doctor call.
Is it
She had her
but it feels
sent
okay?
one to her daughter who had a new computer job,
So I'm
and her daughter called
I'm
up
gonna get
just
you up on the
raving
wall
about
and
it,
down
how
to
much it
the
helped. Yeah.
bench because if you do this for somebody else, you want to leave it on them and you just want to walk them over where they can lay down easy. So I'm going to put your glasses back in your hand. And I'm going to get you up and walk you back, okay?
Okay, they take charcoal, done.
I
Yep.
got you.
So I have a little girl here.
Okay.
What?
I'm not going to let you run into
They
anything.
asked about sinus infections.
I'm not gonna let you run into anything.
I haven't had much success with charcoal and sinus infections. It certainly wouldn't hurt, but one time I had a really horrible sinus infection, and I used light therapy, and that was absolutely amazing. I just took the old incandescent lights, put a washcloth over my face so I wouldn't burn myself, and just moved the light back and forth. What did I use? I used a treble light, but you could just use a lamp or whatever. But just so you know, it has to be an incandescent light, the old-fashioned lights, and that's what it just drained immediately. But any other, I'm just trying to think. Something ran into my head.
What about earaches?
Earaches. Also, I use light therapy on earaches, but I put a charcoal tablet in my ear and do it. And one time I had fairly recently, what do you call it when you're really dizzy? Yeah, thank you. And I got up and the room was just spinning. And so I put a charcoal tablet in each of my ears and used light therapy, and that was really incredible. Also helped. And yeah.
So I grew up with my mom using charcoal, and she used to make an poultice just like they did, but just smaller, like this size. Put one on each ear when I had earaches, a little piece of plastic over, then an ace bandage around my head, and put me to bed. within 5 minutes, the ache would be gone and I'd be asleep. When I took it off in the morning, they stank.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep, and then Mom would do it for several nights until, sometimes even a night beyond the earache time, just to make sure it was gone. It worked like a charm, and I had earaches for several years, and she did that.
So when you see a baby doing this, you can guess that there's something bothering it there. Kimberly, are you?
Well, I was just going to say that just reminded me, with the smell, an amazing story of a Mennonite woman. Okay. Because when the charcoal smells, you've got a pretty bad infection.
I believe you mean radiation burns. You're correct, whoever wrote this. We did mean radiation burns, not just for the X-ray burn, but the charcoal doesn't. When we say it works for radiation burns, if the flesh is burned and you have an open ulcer there, yes, it will work for the radiation burn. Charcoal will also absorb radiation, believe it or not. All these nuclear power plants around the world, they have a giant stack up into the air, and no, she's heard so many of these programs. We think we've heard this before, but each one of those nuclear reactors has a giant crib, 8 to 12 tons of coconut activated charcoal to take out radioactive material before it goes up the stack and out into the atmosphere, drifts across over Hawaii and lands in Southern California. So when Fukushima happened, the Japanese government started buying up all the coconut activated charcoal in the market to decontaminate all the contamination of radioactivity around Fukushima and beyond. And we would not have known that except we purchased large quantities of charcoal and then we saw our prices going up, and so we inquired. Otherwise, we would not have known this. But this actually goes back to the early 1900s. Coconut activated charcoal, for some reason, works better for radioactive adsorption than other activated charcoals such as wood or bamboo.
Now, I'm wondering about when we go to the dentist.
Here, Pastor, use this.
I'm wondering when we go to the dentist, a lot of us have to get x-rays every year, am I correct? So what can we do to deal with the radiation, because that causes gene mutations which can cause eventually cancer? So can you put activated charcoal, like a slurry water, in your mouth? Is that something you should do right away after you go to the dentist?
There is an organization called IAOMT, International Association of Oral Medicine and Toxicologists. They're a worldwide dental organization. They have a protocol for removing dental amalgams. And they recommend charcoal before and after, and to swallow. But all the dental surgeons also wear charcoal masks that we provide them. We provide a charcoal mask that has activated carbon cloth in it, and it's the same cloth that's used for nuclear, biological, chemical warfare suits, which does take out radioactive elements.
So we should
But it's also designed to absorb
The
mercury.
close answer is yes.
before and after.
You can do before and after. Yeah.
And if you read my protocol, it all started in my mouth with having mercury amalgams removed.
So do you you let it sit in your mouth for what?
This association, they have you, not a gargle, but swish it around your mouth and swallow it. They don't want you to spit it out. Because they want the charcoal to bind off, whether it's in this case mercury or whatever else. They want it to bind it off, and then once it's bound to the charcoal, the activated charcoal will not let it go. That charcoal has to get back up to something like 600 to 800 degrees Celsius to make it offload that pollutant. So once it's got it, it travels to the other end and it's eliminated together.
I guess, so you're in the dentist. So you're in the dentist and they do a panel of x-rays. Do you put poultices outside on your cheek and your jaw and you take it internally?
Well, these dentists are very serious. I mean, they suit up.
No, I'm
And
talking
so-
about the patient.
So I'm agreeing with you.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
they agree that this is very serious. This exposure is serious to them because they do it all day long. So for them, it becomes a vocational thing.
Yeah.
It's an occupational thing. And yes, they want to protect themselves just like you do. And this is why they use the charcoal internally. But you can extend that to a poultice that our young woman here made. You can you could use that same poultice and put it over your mouth. Have one on the way there and some charcoal slurry that you can drink and swallow.
And just real quick, charcoal has the ability to draw toxins from deep tissue. These little cheeks aren't that deep. And so by putting it on topically, like I've, had abscesses and stuff and have used poultices on the outside because I couldn't even put anything in them. My problems are all with my mouth. And so one time I was just like, I looked like I had a golf ball in my mouth. And I couldn't even put anything inside, no tablets, nothing. And I just put a huge poultice and it brought it down amazingly.
Okay, so we could go on and on without a break, but let's all take a 8-minute break. And please write your question down. Please write it down. And we'll take an 8-minute break and we'll come back here. We're not going to cover everything this evening, but we're covering a lot of material. I'm really thankful for that. Good questions, and I haven't finished on this question yet.